Whenever North Korea makes international headlines, the focus is almost entirely on its internationally condemned nuclear program and aggressive displays of militarism. It is a nation placed under intense, constant scrutiny as a terrifying military threat. But the North Korean government isn't particularly ashamed of these terrifying international spectacles. In fact, these highly choreographed parades and missile tests serve a very specific, calculated purpose. They are a distraction. This diagram places North Korea's total economic scale into perspective. The nation operates on an estimated nominal GDP of just $25 billion. That puts the entire country's transactional economy at a size smaller than a single affluent American neighborhood, Beverly Hills. Beyond a dramatic chest beating, the nation has dwindled into economic obscurity. It is a country that maintains a massive global profile while operating on a budget that barely matches a high-end U.S. zip code. To understand how a nation reaches this point, we have to look back to July of 1953. After years of devastating conflict, the war ended, leaving the peninsula divided along the 38th parallel. You had a capitalist nation in the south and a new communist nation in the north. Looking at the absolute ruin left behind, you might assume both these nations faced an equally impossible climb. But immediately following the war, North Korea was actually heavily favored to win the economic race. The North held massive structural advantages. They controlled the vast majority of the peninsula's natural resources, and they shared direct land borders with powerful, highly motivated communist allies, specifically China and the Soviet Union. They had a head start, immense raw materials, and direct superpower backing. Yet, despite holding these advantages at the starting line, North Korea executed one of the most complete economic squanders in modern history. This flowchart maps out the mechanics of a command economy. Unlike a free market, every decision regarding production, investment, and capital allocation is controlled directly by a central government node and funneled out to state-run operations. In the early days, this system worked. Fueled by technical goods and industrial expertise supplied by the Soviet Union, the North Korean government implemented aggressive 5-year plans. They rapidly converted a fledgling agricultural society into an expanding industrial state, building ports and increasing crop yields. Throughout the 1950s and into the early 60s, this momentum translated into serious numbers. The centrally planned economy of the North was growing at an impressive rate, pulling ahead of its neighbor to the South. Central planning is highly effective at jump-starting a post-war economy through immediate mobilization. But that initial boom masks a fatal vulnerability. The entire machine relies on constant, massive external lifelines to keep running. By the mid-1960s, Soviet support began to wane. Paranoia regarding capitalist nations, specifically the United States, set in. In response, North Korea drastically increased its defense spending, attempting to build a military capable of surviving without constant foreign protection. To understand why this decision suffocated their economy, we have to look at how military spending works mechanically, starting with the United States. This chart breaks down total U.S. economic output. The United States has an enormous federal military budget, but because the vast majority of the economy is made up of state budgets, local infrastructure, and private enterprise, that military spend only accounts for about 3.2% of the nation's total GDP. Now look at the math for a command economy. North Korea has no state no-tents and no private enterprise. The national government budget is the entire economy. So when they ramped up military spending, they were sinking roughly 25% of their total national output directly into their armed forces. Sinking a quarter of total national output into non-productive military assets year after year is a mathematical death sentence. It forces a government to rely on borrowing money just to maintain basic infrastructure. In 1965, the inevitable happened. Despite having fewer natural resources, South Korea's economic growth surpassed North Korea's, and the North would never catch up again. The financial strain of maintaining ambitious 5-year plans while continuously feeding the military reached a breaking point. In 1980, North Korea defaulted on its debts, cutting off its ability to borrow foreign money. Then came the final blow. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Overnight, North Korea lost its biggest lifeline. Their access to vital fertilizer supplies vanished, and their remaining trade agreements dissolved. The government tried to restart the machine. Between 2009 and 2016, they even experimented with limited private enterprise, allowing state-owned enterprise managers to act a bit more like Western CEOs and keep some profits to buy raw materials. But without the ability to borrow money or import raw materials, the centrally planned economy became paralyzed. Which brings us to where the two nations stand today, at the end of a 70-year divergence. South Korea built a hyper-modern, globally dominant economy. They did this without the natural resource advantages the North had, without the same early superpower handouts, and while constantly living under the threat of a hostile, nuclear-armed neighbor. This side-by-side bar chart shows the result. Because South Korea facilitated private enterprise and invested its capital into productive infrastructure, its economy today is over 60 times larger than North Korea's. When you run these numbers, the modern headlines about North Korean aggression take on a different meaning. The regime uses military aggression as a tool for extortion, trading temporary calm for the foreign aid they need to survive. Like a child throwing a tantrum in a supermarket to get a lollipop, they use these threats to force a payout because their own